So, Anne Rosenbaum, my mother, she wasn't called the manager for nothing. I mean, she did it all kind of behind the scenes, but very effectively. She managed my father, Saul, who was awkward and brilliant and introverted, into a crackerjack textile salesman because they needed the money. And he said no children. He didn't want to pass on his bad genes. But here I am, and my sister too, she managed us. And it went on like that until Saul got Alzheimer's. And then she said, find us a place. This is a woman who said, I'll never leave New York where I was born. And so they moved into an assisted living place, but she took care of him. You know, that loyalty that runs through her spirit. And things got so peculiar because he had been very reserved and kind of weird. But when his brain softened, he all of a sudden said, I love you. I love you, and followed her kind of like a little pull toy. And it was too much and it was too late. But in any case, mercifully, he died. And then we wanted to see how Anne would manage herself. And boy, what a job she did. I mean, first of all, she had dressed very conservatively, but now she loved to go thrifting and her outfits were wild. And then she worked, you should have seen her behind the cash register at the Friends of the Library. And right next door, there was a coffee shop, a hip coffee shop with paltry desserts. So she sold them her famous rum cake. I mean, they didn't know it was made from a mix, but if you pour enough rum on it, it sells like crazy. And she could knit and watch television and I think read simultaneously. And she was fierce at the bridge table. But her passion, I need to tell you, was her great-grandchildren. And I brought them every Friday from the time when they were born. And you know what she did? She purloined food from the dining room against the rules in front of everybody because the children should eat. And it went on like this until she got into her mid-90s. And you know, we're not supposed to last all that long. She knew it because things happened. I mean, one eye went out with a stroke, and then her mobility was impaired with spinal stenosis. And one day she just looked at me and she said, you know, I'm tired. It's too hard. I've had a long, rich life. I'm ready to leave. That was her euphemism. And I said, oh, I said, how are you going to leave? I'm going to stop eating and drinking. I've looked into it. I said, well, it's your life and your potential death, but we need to check with the doctor. And he checked everything and nothing was fixable. And so you know what he did? He brought in hospice. That's the way to go on a transitional journey like this. And I said, Mom, I want to be there. And she said, oh no, it would be too hard on you. And I said, it would be an honor. And so she put up with it. And we had, you could say, a companionable vigil. I sat next to her bed. I played classical music because it soothed me. I watched things happen I never would have believed, like her conversations up somewhere between where the ceiling and the wall met. And sometimes these conversations were very lively, and sometimes they were a little disturbing. And she'd look at me and she'd say, what was that all about? And I said, well, I've heard at times like this that the veil between this world and that thins, and maybe they're ready to welcome you. And she, who did not have a spiritual bone in her body, said, yes. Now, every night I said, should I go? And she said, go, go, because I didn't know whether she would die the next day. And we were ready to go on a camping trip. She said, go, go, go. But the chaplain from hospice, whom she didn't like very much, said, you know, he called and he said, your mother has started eating and drinking again. It's too boring, she said, to just lie there. And I felt such a joy welling up in me. Maybe we'd have her for a little longer. But when we got back, that fasting was working on her old organs. And she was, you could say, in the trough, in the groove. And I sat with her, and it took 14 days, tough body. But there it was, July 4th, a holiday. And the same woman from hospice who had registered her and greeted her and welcomed her. She stood with her hands on my mother's cold blue feet, those feet with those high arches and those hammer toes from wearing shoes that were too small when she was a kid. And she looked at my mother, who was just lying there. And she said, "Anne, today could be your Independence Day." And sure enough, at 4 o'clock, my mother took a breath and then no breath. That was it. And then the Neptune Society came. They had been managed a long time ago, and they wrapped her tenderly in velour, and they rolled her out. And my daughter and I went into the bathroom where everything had been boxed up because my mother said, "I'm not going to spend an extra day's rent on that place." And we got in the van, and we went to Berkeley, to Indian Rock, and we lay on our backs, and we looked at the fireworks. Leave it to the manager that we'd never forget the incandescent life and death of Anne Rosenbaum, manager extraordinaire.